Hey guys, how's it going? It's Francisco. So we're going to go over arrays in this lesson. So this is predominantly going to focus on just arrays. We're not going to go into any other data types such as objects until we kind of cover this. The main reason why I'm doing this is because in my Pomodoro application tutorial that I'm teaching, I went over objects and arrays, and I realized that I haven't really covered it on our basic JavaScript course. So we're going to go ahead and cover this, and I don't want to get too complicated because I was kind of typing in everything, well, doing everything that we could with arrays, and I don't want to get too complicated. So without further ado, we're just going to build on everything we have already, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how to create an array. And essentially what it is a list. And you can put in numbers. You can put in strings. And other things as well that we're going to cover later. Okay. And remember, strings, you can have spaces in there if you want to. Pretty cool thing. All right. So, cool feature about arrays is that they're always inside brackets. So whenever you define an empty array, you can actually do that. Empty list. And I'm calling them lists because it makes sense, right? They're essentially lists. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll console log my list first. And what is that going to return? I'll let you guys pause this and then run it if you want to, and then we'll just kind of learn what's going on. Okay. So it pretty much returned the entire array with the brackets as well. So it's essentially that's what it's going to do. So we'll go ahead and do friends. I can't spell friends either, right? These are my friends. Okay. And it returned the array with the strings. Okay. And then if I do the empty list, it's just going to bring back what? What do you think it's going to return? Just a parentheses. By itself, not that useful, right? Because what are we just putting list? But the fact that I can actually have friends here, and the cool thing is that lists kind of have their own arrays. I mean, their own methods. So I'm actually gonna show you one. So how many friends do I have? So what I'll do is I'll create a function, and I'll call this cal to calculate. And we're gonna calculate stuff with the arrays. And remember, in the functions, you can feed in any argument that you want, as long as we're referencing this variable. If you're not too familiar with what I am saying, go back and review the function thing, because I think it was pretty thorough, but this is just reinforcement to what we already know. Okay? So, I'm going to reference the pass-in value array, or R, and arrays have a pretty cool thing called methods. And what you can do, the thing is, okay, if I do list right here, I'll see all of the methods that I have within this array. But if I just reference the argument, it won't give me this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do length. And then I'm going to replace it with R, since we're passing it in. Okay, so now I'm going to evaluate. Oh, and I also have to return this otherwise. So I'm going to return this value. Otherwise, console log won't see the value that I'm returning. Okay, and again, reiterating, we covered this in our previous function lesson. So if you want to go ahead and check it out because you're kind of feeling lost, go ahead and pause this and go back and check it out. Or hit up the comments. We'll go ahead and do the list, and we're going to get the length of the list. So it should be 4. And just a quick FYI, so certain languages count from 0, but I think this one counted all the way from 4. So I'll actually get into the reason why. But I just want to show you that these arrays in JavaScript have a built-in method, and these methods are essentially functions that are within the whole array class, I would say. I'm not sure how you would define it in JavaScript, but it's really cool. And if we continue to pass in different ones, so it'll count our friends too, which we only have 3 friends. And it counts 3 friends. Okay. And if we have an empty list, oh, nope, this is where we want to do it. So again, we're referencing the function cal, so we're calling that function cal, and then we're passing in the array within it. So, and then within the function, we can see that it's returning the length property of the array. And this should be 0 because it's empty. Okay, pretty cool. All right, so now we're going to talk about counting in JavaScript. So if I want to pull the values of the array individually, I can actually do that by doing list and then 1. List bracket 1. So what do you think it's going to call? So I'll let you pause this and then prepare to have your minds blown, because this is going to be epic. Just kidding. 2. So remember what I was telling you guys that computers count from 0, not 1. And the reason why is 1 is actually the 0. So nope. There we go. So computers count from 0 to whatever number you're getting to. But since whenever you're getting the length, it actually adjusts to count from 1. So because obviously it wouldn't make sense if you're counting 3, but you actually have 4. There's some languages that won't do that for you, but JavaScript kind of already knows what you're going for. So keep in mind whenever you're referencing something, so if you're actually trying to get to this value, you're only going to type in 1. So cool thing that we just figured out. Another cool thing, and then let's just double track this because we really want to get this concept. So what would happen if I type in 3? What number would I get? All right. Pause. All right, we're going to go for it. 4. Okay, so remember, just subtract 1 whenever you're doing this, and that way you'll kind of get, or add 1. You'll get your bearings and layout of navigating through an arrays. Okay, cool. So go to w3schools.com, and there is the JavaScript arrays and JavaScript methods. So if you really want to review your homework, go ahead and do this. But now we're going to talk about more kind of technical functions of arrays. So cool thing about arrays is that they have you can actually put in arrays within arrays. You can put objects within arrays. You can put in a lot of stuff within arrays. And what I can do is, I'll kind of reference that here in a bit. But we have a method, a really cool method here. And it's called pop. So what pop does is that it pretty much puts in a new value in your array, and that's really useful because whenever you're gonna, I mean, let me put it this way: whenever you're gonna put something in a list, you're gonna, like, for example, you're doing a to-do list, you're gonna want to add something to your array. You just don't want to have your array be static, right? You want it to be dynamic. So I have friends, and what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna pop friends, and what I'm gonna do, sorry, push. That's the one I'm looking for. Pop does a different thing. It pops it out. So yeah, it does. I know it probably doesn't make sense, but and that's why I said the wrong thing at first, because it's kind of hard to remember these things if you don't use them too much. Since we're using databases in our examples, we don't really need to call it ourselves. These things kind of get abstracted. But if you're doing Mongo and if you're just working with Mongo by itself, you are going to have to use a push method if you're wanting to push something to a value that's already there. But anyways, just for so since it's since you're working with a method, essentially it's a function, and all you have to do is pass. It's already defined, so all you have to do really is pass in the value that you're wanting to add. So since friends are strings, we're gonna pass in a string, and we're gonna call this one. What should we call it? I'm gonna do Ysgramor because he's a very controversial character within the Elder Scrolls world. Okay. So going back to JavaScript basics, so we're going through the orders of operation, and essentially the orders of operation is how our code is being executed, and our code is always executed from top to bottom. So sometimes some things are kind of quirky where if I define something later down, it'll still work if I'm calling a function earlier. But just so we can have our asynchronous code work, sorry, not asynchronous, our synchronous code work, just know that we're executing from the top to the top to the bottom. So since we already defined friends here, and then we're gonna push Ysgramor into our list, it's gonna return whenever we call for this. So I'm just gonna type in friends, and we should see new friends string, a modified string, friends array pop out. So or display. So pause it. Guess what it's gonna do? Okay, cool. So our friends list was modified because we used the push method, and we decided to push Ysgramor in our friends list. So we have a very unique and dynamic friends list right here, or I should say array. So that's a cool thing to do. Another thing that we can do is we can shift elements. I'm not really going to go over that, but I want to go over pop, which will kind of pop a value out, which is let's just do it. So essentially what pop did is just kind of return like this value, and if I run it again, yeah, it just returned a value that was popped out. Okay, yeah, so pop removes the last element of the array. So it removed Baby Yoda. So if, for example, let's go down the orders of operation. So if I do friends dot, and let's do push, and we're gonna push, you know what, we're gonna do Yamcha. That way we can stay dynamic. All right, what's it gonna do? Going down the orders of operations, our first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna push Yamcha to the list, to the array list, and then we're gonna pop another one. So guess who we're gonna pop? And remember, it pops out the last value of the list. So, and when you push something, it is the nth number on that list, and guess what that nth number is? So, of course, Yamcha is the one that gets popped. You see what I did there? So if I remove popped, we'll see that Yamcha is going to be the last one. Okay? So pop removes the last one, push adds to the end of your list. And then you can shift elements, which if you use shift, it removes the first element from fruit. or sorry, I'm reading the whole list. So the W3 schools thing. And I'm gonna go ahead and just stop this for the dogs, all right? And then we'll kind of follow back up. Okay, so now we're gonna go to shift. So shift is gonna remove the first value. So I'll do shift, and then guess what happens? I removed myself out of the list. So Francisco is the first one, and that's what happened. So essentially, we kind of, now that we've started messing with this, we kind of started adding a lot of other variables and strings. So now we're going to talk about what happens, what other types. So remember when I told you guys that you can also add other arrays. So you could also add numbers into your array. So if I were to replace Yamcha and just add a 1 to the friends, guess what would happen? Let me save this. I'm going to remove shift because we're not going to really use it right now. It's going to defeat the everything. Or make things too good. So it added the actual number value. So the number value is a number. It's not a string. And if you remember, if we add these together, if we were to call for this and then add it with this, it's going to concatenate it as a string. So it's really cool because then with this array, even though it doesn't make sense traditionally, I don't see when you would add unlike values into an array, but it's just something that JavaScript does. It could handle both. Another thing is we can actually push in an array within an array, which is pretty cool. Heard you liked arrays within your arrays, so let's do that. Okay, cool. So we have an array, and guess what value this array is? It is gonna be 0, 1, 2, and 3. So if I console log the third value of this array, what is it gonna be? It's gonna be another array. So we're just gonna call this array. All right, cool. So I think this is it for the arrays. I think I was rambling a little bit way too much about different things and then the dogs. So just to kind of give you a summary of what we covered right now is that you can call in arrays, and they have these objects where you can pretty much they are working as an object, which I'll kind of go into details about that later. And you can have these methods where you can kind of play with the arrays, modify the arrays, get important information that like the length of the arrays. And for example, whenever we did the cal to calculate the length, just go do list for this one. It returns it, but we can easily do the same thing like this. We don't have to call a function, but I just kind of wanted to add on top of what we did. This is kind of redundant for the moment, but if once we start doing a little bit more complicated things, it's going to make sense. And we also have a for each method for these things, but I don't want to go over the for each until we actually make our own for each. So pretty cool. You also have all these other cool methods here. Filter, find keys. It's really cool because you can actually play with these if you want, but it's really cool because essentially what it's gonna do is it's gonna open the world for us to do more complicated task. So our next one is gonna be objects, and we're gonna see how it ties into the whole arrays. And it's essentially the same, not the same thing, but it's essentially It's almost like arrays, but it's a little bit more precise. And I will talk about what that precision means. So guys, I hope that this was somewhat cohesive for you guys. But arrays are one of those things where there's just so much you can do with arrays, and I really want to get to the point where we start working heavily with arrays and objects, and that's what we're going to do with the Pomodoro app. So if you haven't already, go ahead and check out the Pomodoro application video so you can kind of start setting up your whole view environment and everything. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next one.